Hi, welcome back to StoryHive On Location in Penticton. I'm Rob O'Day, and we are live in Penticton with another incredible episode brought to you with support by TELUS STORYHIve. I'm in Penticton speaking with Glenn Clark, an incredibly talented artist, as you can see from the work behind me. And we're going to dive into his story, some knowledge that he's willing to try and teach everybody, and we're going to dive into some color theory and your work. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you kidding?
How are you doing?
I'm good, good. Very good, thanks.
Let's dive into who you are and where you're from initially, and then we'll get into some more juicier questions.
The easy ones.
Yeah, we'll go the easy ones first.
Like fruit. Okay, I was born and raised in Kelowna, so the Okanagan boy that's way back in '59, and back then the three cities in the valley were about the same size. I mean, the house is still there, but when I was growing up, it was orchards and wilderness around me, but now it's miles to that edge.
Yep.
I can't even see it anymore. But yeah, and then when I was 19, I moved to Nelson to attend a graphic arts school for a year. And then I came home, and then I went to Alberta to find work, and then I came home, and I went to Saskatchewan to find work, and then came back, and then went to Alberta, and several times over. and then somehow I ended up here in Penticton in 1991, and the traveling ended. So much for me being the breeze.
So settling in Penticton, it's funny because I did the opposite, coming from Penticton going to Kelowna. And you got to see the Okanagan basically grow, because Kelowna went from, like you said, a smaller town to now I think it's like 250,000 people there, if not more. Do you think that as your travels have gone, and you've worked in the arts industry yourself for a long time, since your 20s, I believe, right? Like out of school, you went in and got into the arts industry. I
was a little late getting into it. I went, like when I was 19, I did graphic design for a year. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I learned some things. I can do hand lettering very well and whatnot, but I knew that wasn't really for me. So the fine art game would come along a little bit later.
How did you initially get into selling artwork? Like at such a young age?
Oh, it's all through family back then, you know? It's
okay.
Like, you get support from family and friends, and people always saw that I was like, that's what I'm going to be, obviously. It's like he doesn't do anything else. So, and so people would hire me to do drawings of them. But you know, it's you grow up and nothing changes. And then high school ended, and there it was. You know, it's like, how do you become an artist? It wasn't clear anymore. So it took a while.
Has it ever been difficult to get to a point when you were starting your career and watching it evolve to the industry that it is now? The difference, have you noticed there's a major difference, or is it still relatively the same process to get your work out there?
Oh boy, getting the work out there, I suppose it's probably the same. I mean, I really shied away from showing in galleries when I was younger, probably for the reason I didn't feel I was ready. You know, as long as you're learning and getting better than the stuff you made before was like, well, you know. So, but I finally started getting into some galleries and doing some shows, and it's just probably the same with anybody else. It takes a lot of courage to put a proposal and a package together and ship it off to a gallery and see what happens, or march in the door and introduce yourself. And you know, it's because when you're rejected, it's never a great feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't apply, you don't get rejected, so it's easy not to.
Yes, I think we can all relate as creatives that's the hardest part, is putting yourself on the chopping block to be
viewed. For me, it's always easier when the people come to you and want to do something rather than me going to them. So
you've always found commissions and mural work is something more than trying to chase going to a gallery?
Murals actually was my mainstream for probably over 20 years. If you look at my CV, it was every year there was another one. That's how we put the shoes on our kids when they were growing up. So I was using my brush to earn a living. It was for so many years I did 2 jobs because artist wasn't going to do it. It's just not enough, I guess, opportunity out there for somebody. It's really hard to make a living full time as an artist, if not impossible in this country. Mm-hmm. But so I mean, at one point I was working at the art gallery part-time, then I was working construction for a friend part-time, and then the evenings was when I would paint. And then You know, my beautiful wife, she used to call herself an art widow. Well, I guess she still does. And she's a great artist herself. But I'm that guy that'll get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and find myself in the studio with a brush in my hand and a cup of coffee in the other.
What was the hardest challenge for you to overcome becoming an artist, that this is your career?
Well, there's a lot of challenges, you know, it's a lot. I mean, finances is one. You know, to buy a tube of good red paint now is $70. So when you look at those Bob Ross palettes that he does in his famous shows, he's got those great big blobs there. It's like $100 worth of paint. Well, you'd go bankrupt in a week painting like that. It's
wow.
like so in the second half, I hope you can catch the show because I'm going to teach you how to avoid those little issues. But you know, and then getting recognition is always something. And for a young artist, there's not many places to get recognition. There's group shows maybe, or a juried show. You try and get yourself in those kind of shows, and coffee shops, I guess, things like that, trying to get your work out there, whatever you can. And sometimes you get a lucky break, you meet somebody and they see your work and you get a commission and things roll along. You get a little bit of a wave going, and it's just it's a funny career that way. It really is. Sometimes you'll go for months without any gig whatsoever, like long time, and all of a sudden 3 things will happen all at once. And it's like, well, okay.
Does that ever become overwhelming when you have, say, 3 commissions on and do you ever give yourself a deadline with your commissions?
Well, commissions, I think there's a understanding that it's going to get done sooner than later when I take on a commission, so I really delve into it. But the works around here, I put no deadline on it. I'll have stuff that'll sit around for a year before I'll sign it. There's always a chance there's another stroke that could fix things or change things, make it better.
Did you ever stretch your own canvases?
I make all my canvases.
How is that process?
Well, I'll show you in the second half of it. It's not a big deal, really. It's part of it's quality control, part of it's finances. Like to buy a canvas even this size, you know, it's going to maybe come up close to $200. I don't know. It's not cheap for these canvases now. Not only that, I've seen some of these smaller canvases that you can buy, and you know, you can get like a canvas that size, and sometimes you can pick it up for $15-20. I can't make it that cheap for the small ones. I don't really work that small anyways, typically. But man, the canvas, I mean, you can tear it with your hand, or if you go to staple, it just comes apart. And I'm not sure if it's really canvas or if it's some sort of a paper product that they're using. So there's that involved too. So it's, but I've always made my own things. Right from the get-go of painting, you get the idea and then you figure out the scale you want and you can create to that scale. And then there's also the other prep was just getting the canvas ready. So I'll usually put about 5 or 6 coats of gesso down on it and sand it down in between so that the canvas feels more like a paper surface than a canvas surface, so you don't have all those obnoxious little bumps. Oh man, it's annoying. Yeah.
Right, like
so it's like it's a few days just before the paint even hits a canvas for me working on them. So and that's a springtime job. You know, it's the winter I paint, and in the fall I make all my canvases, and and get all the wood ready and make all the sawdust I want.
I've never really seen an artist who can capture lighting the way you do on skins.
Lighting is something I studied in university. I took some courses in the drama department, and then I had some friends that were into photography, so I was always my ear on it and always had a keen eye on it. So I mean, I think for what I do, photography is a very important part of it. So I do a lot of my own photographies, and lighting is something that I'm very aware of when I'm doing my shoots.
When you're going and you're like taking your photos, do you ever find that you're going into it with a vision and end up coming out with something completely different? Or are you just completely open to the process fully?
That's a good question, because more often than not, when I have the vision or whatever, I stick to the plan, you know. But sometimes, you know how plans are.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, and I know the painting you're talking about, we'll show you everybody later. It's, I don't know how to describe it. I just felt that the world just didn't need another landscape painting at that point, so I had to change things.
Do you ever find that you as an artist are always trying to push yourself in different directions, or are you happy where you are?
Always pushing. If you start making things and it becomes really popular and they're selling, I'll just quit doing it and do something else. But, you know, you only got so many years to work, right? I mean, so if I have 1,000 paintings I want to get done and I can only do 500 of them, you know, you got to pick and choose and work towards it. But yeah, maybe I get bored easy with a subject, but I get onto a subject and I'll be on there like a dog on a bone for a few years, and then there's a great big stack of stuff kicking around, and it's like, I better move on, do something else.
Yeah.
But, you know, I want to try different things with the brush. So I want to do, well, most of it is portrait based. I mean, it's always been the backbone. But when I was doing these portraits, a lot of them were set in these beautiful pastoral settings, and I was doing landscapes as well. I realized, well, I should try doing some landscapes. I wouldn't be the first portrait painter to also do landscapes. There's been some great painters that have done both. So I did some landscapes for a while. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of landscape painters. And then I started doing things that always interest me, historical things. I was starting to do some old hockey paintings. I'm an hockey buff. I love hockey. And when I came to Penticton, I realized there was zero done for the 55 world champion Penticton Bees. There was no billboard. The arena, they had a display case which was empty, and it was kind of embarrassing. So I contacted the team, some of the remaining players, and one's still alive. But anyways, they came down, gave me photographs, and I wanted to dig into life off the rink, you know, the dressing room stuff. To me, that's always where the guys are having fun, or they're being themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing some stuff on the Penticton Bees and helped them get the arena displays back up to speed, and did a mural in town with the Bees. And I mean, that mural was great because it was the down payment for us buying this house.
That's the one on the Elks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, I just clued in that that's your work.
Yeah, it's like...
I've always admired that painting. That is, like growing up in Penticton, I was always like, I love how big and beautiful that painting is. So it's kind of getting to sit down with you and realizing, like, putting two together. I never clued in.
Yeah, that was a crazy piece, because I was working on top of a garden bed with rocks, and of course I had 28 feet, so I had 4 flights of scaffold to get up. And I was working on a rock bed. It wasn't ideal, but anyways, it was almost done. I was right at the top. I was painting the flag, and it was like a Sunday morning. So I don't know why, but a Sunday morning is always when I get knocked or something, almost killed. I've been almost killed at least 2 or 3 times painting on a Sunday morning. It was early. And so there I was, it's like, I don't know, 7, maybe the lights up. Town's dead. I'm painting, and this windstorm came out of nowhere. And I'm telling you, it must have been 80 miles per hour. The whole scaffold was just rocking, and all my stuff disappeared. Like the paints, the brushes, everything gone. And I could see it just disappear, going 80 miles an hour and across the street and into a parking lot and just gone. It's like, and I'm crawling down the scaffold, hoping I can get down there and before it come flying off. But that one I made it. But yeah, that was a fun piece. Yeah.
Do you ever see that, like, do you have a limit of like the ultimate goal that you want to accomplish, and then you'll be like, all right, I can retire happily now because I've finished this painting?
Someone once told me you're only as good as your last painting. That's a mean thing to say. Keeps you pushing anyways. But
that's a good way to say it too, eh?
Yeah, and if you're exploring in your art, you know, that's not a great thing, because when you're exploring, you're usually going to make mud and whatnot, and so maybe it's that part of my career is behind me, I guess. Kind of sure-footed now with the paintbrush.
Yeah, you know what you want in your vision, you can achieve it, and that's...
Let's go back to that Penticton Bee mural. The picture I worked from was given to me by Kevin Conway, the Crusher. He was a defenseman for the old Bees, and he had to get it back from the BC Hall of Fame, which he had given it to. The picture was about this big, you know, back in the old days, black and white. The faces were, you know, not the size of a pinhead, but at least the knob size. They're puny, right? And when you put a spyglass on it, you could see the corners of the eyes with the little glints and everything. The detail was there, but I had to transfer that 1.5 by 2.5 inch painting into 28 feet by 40 feet or whatever it was, right? It was hard, and that was before the digital age. It was, I didn't have all those skills. I had a friend who had a really good camera, better than mine, and he made a regular size picture, and I could see things better. But scaling up, it's always an issue, right? And
yeah, think about that too. Is like, how did you go about, besides the scaling up, like, did you ever to find finer details? Because when it blows up, it's obviously going to lose quality. So did you ever have to like study that smaller piece?
I'd come home and I'd be studying it, making sketches, and I'd take those to the wall and work from that.
It's mind blowing. The things that you would have to do just to be able to get to accomplish a pieces versus now you're just like, oh, crop, blow it up.
I've embraced the digital era. I used to be all analog, but and I think it's better for me working with the digital technology. The cameras are just, like you say, that print that you can, if you get a digital print like that and you had a face that was that big in it, you're not going to see any glints in any eyes with the printing process. The old ones, the printing process from 1955 was 100 times better than it is now. But with that image, I can go onto my computer and I can scale it up to the size, and I can play with the contrast, and I can find things in deep shadows that I can't see. And I'll show you guys later in the second half of the show, an example of just that. But I think it makes the paintings better. So, yeah.
Do you teach younger students?
I used to have an art program when I worked at the art gallery for a number of years. It was a Thursday after school program. I had a number of students with a lot of talent that came through there and actually went on to art school and stuff. Yeah. But you're right though. I am the kind of the Paul Bunyan of the art world. Everything's gone digital, and here I am still kind of painting.
Over your career, what has been your favorite piece of work that you've done and accomplished? Or top 3, because I know you've done so many.
Well, I'm going to say about 12 years ago, I did a series of works, and it was we called it Whack 'em Sack 'em, and it was based on the NHL hockey guys from the 1960s, the golden age of hockey. All these no helmets, and I was working with metal. So these were metal sculptures that I was attaching to wood panels, a little bit bigger than that. They were about 4 feet square. And I was buying Creasel and signboard. It was a nice thick 1/2 inch panel, and I'd be painting the rink on that, and then attaching the figures on top of the rink. And the figures were like a low profile 3D, and the metal was the funnest part, because my neighbor Mike he's a brilliant mechanic and blacksmith. And so with him behind me, I could do anything, right? So there's my assistant, but he's a partner. And so I was making these sculptures, and I get these great big sheets of metal, and I'd be dragging them out, like, I don't know, -10 and cold, and 7:30 in the morning, and I'd be out there drawing with my grinder and cutting them out. It's not coming out of me, and then freezing on the metal and that, cutting it out. And I know all my neighbors, they think I'm nuts. I know it. But anyways, that's okay. And so I did this series, and they were kinetic interactions. So you could pull on a handle, and they would do tricks. Like I had this one where there's 2 sculptures, one on top of each other, and it was the one on the bottom was Brad Park. It was taken from a 1976 photo in a semi-final game, and the guy on top was Dave Schultz from the Philadelphia Flyers, the guy who holds the most penalty record still. He was a bad guy. Anyways, he's got Park down. He's like this, and you pull on the handle, and the arm comes up, punches him right in the head snaps back, and behind the sculptor is a tooth pops up, a bloody tooth, and it all comes back down, and it makes you laugh your guts out.
That's so
every
funny.
Single time. It's like, oh my God, it's
That's
funny.
Hilarious.
Yeah, so I made this Whack 'em Sack 'em show. I spent a couple years cutting out sculptures and making a show, and I toured around BC for a bit. And I think that's part of the problem with Canada. It's so darn big. It's hard to get your work out. People got excited when they saw Whack 'em Sack 'em. Just, we've got to get this to Russia, or we could need the Hockey Hall of Fame, and just to get excited. I've never seen that with my work quite like that, and so I made all these packages and I sent them to galleries right across the country. I think I sent 24 packages to try and get a show. And that was the last time I ever did that. And I got 2 replies back. And it's like, wow, 22 of them didn't even bother to thank me for sending them a package. And it really kind of struck me about where is the state of the gallery systems in Canada right now. I mean, when Harper was here, he got rid of we had a transport service before, so it was a non-profit kind of thing where galleries could put a show in the semi-truck and it was going back and forth across the country every month.
I didn't know that.
So you could get a show from a Nova Scotian artist, say, and the expenses would be not going to kill you. Now that's gone, and you never get shows from far away because it's so much money to travel a show, to build a crate for a painting that's that big over there, or even this one. But you know, if you get a 6 by 5 foot painting or 7 by 5 foot painting and you build a crate for it, now you got a 200-pound thing that's going to cost you $600 to get to Edmonton or something, right? And it's like, I'm an artist. I don't have $600. Gallery doesn't have $600. We're starving. Yeah. It's always the first thing cut. So it's I do the scale. I love the scale. I mean, when I was in university, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it never seemed to end. But you also have to learn how to store that scale, because a lot of it's, I got stories. I filled my mom's place up. I filled our place up. I filled the garage up. I got all these big paintings. I'm still making them. Oh my God.
Right? No, I can imagine.
But that's an issue. So yeah.
And like you were saying, the art galleries, they're not, from what I've seen, they're not super popular with younger generations. So how do you make them want to come and understand art, right? If it's not like growing up, we used to just go to the art gallery because it was cool, or you'd go there and hang out and you'd take a look around. But I don't see, with everything being so like in your face all the time, do you feel that like the art galleries are going to become just like ghost towns or shut down eventually?
I don't know if that's, I mean, that might be a little dramatic, but you're right. It's not enough that's being done to encourage the upcoming generations to become members of and supporters of and regular visitors of places like art galleries. And why wouldn't you? So what do you want to do this weekend? You're 14 or whatever. Let's go check out the gallery. It's free. Some cool stuff down there. So I mean, how do you get those kids to take that step though? I mean,
that's the thing. Is
it an education process? Is it coming out of everybody's just on their telephones now, right? Yeah. They're getting everything from there. So maybe they should have these little pop-ups. Go to the gallery.
Go see art. Visually see art. Has it made it difficult as an artist, like you were saying? You went from prices of paint and materials alone have skyrocketed too.
They've kept up. I mean, that tube of paint that I said was $70. I'm going to say 25 years ago it was 40. It made me gulp, right? And so, but in terms of like a price of a loaf of bread was 89 cents and now it's $4. So I mean, bread has taken over the increased portion of, because maybe the paint companies know there's only so much us artists can actually give.
Because it's expensive. Like paint is expensive, and then you don't want to waste it.
The good stuff is, and then that's one of the things that. And when I was teaching, it's like you need proper tools, and I don't believe in student paint. It's just like somebody gives you a great big tube of red student paint. Hey, it was a great deal. It's $20. It's like I'm just like, oh God, and you got to be nice and take it, I guess, but you're never going to use it. You give it away at a yard sale or something. Maybe I'm an art snob now, but.
Well, you know what works and what you enjoy working with, and
it's got to work.
Exactly. You have a preference, and there's nothing snobbish about knowing what you do and what you need to achieve what you do. From your perspective, if there was one thing you could change about the art industry that would be beneficial today, what do you think it would be?
Well, I think it's a quick, easy fix, to be honest. But it's always politics in a way. Is it federal? Is it provincial? Is it local? But you know, there's always old buildings around that are not being used, and artists don't care if the floor is pretty, they're going to drop paint on it. But you know, it's like if every single town had an old building, a city building, and there's always a warehouse or, you know, an old hall that, you know, nobody's using anymore. Take it and let artists get in there and let art collectives thrive, have a place. And even if it was temporary, you know, another place would come up. And, you know, when I got in town here, it was my friend Dennis Nielsen, also a really good artist, but he was working towards the show and he knew a bunch of people in town. So he phoned some guys, and next thing you know, we were above the Down Under and so the Down Under nightclub was, and we were on the top floor. It must have been, I don't know, 3,000 square foot. It was an apartment, not an apartment, it was like I don't know what business was in there. But anyways, it was just a great big open space with the floor was peeling up. It was, you know, and it was perfect, you know. Throw some artificial lights behind you and we'd be painting away, and at 3 in the morning, the bar would empty out and we'd go over the window and watch all the chaos, and it was kind of entertaining. But you know, something like that, you know, and then I'd invite other artists in, and we'd have a place, and then that place ended, and then we found another one. It was the right across from the Penticton Art Gallery, where the Eye Center is. Okay. It used to be the Western News. Before that, it was another business, and actually an artist, George Anglis, he designed that building back in the 50s. He was a local artist back in the early days. I never met him. I met his wife and I know his children, but. That was another place. We were working in there in the winter. There was 3 of us, and it ended up growing to like 6 of us, and that's okay. There's enough space in there. But the heat, there was no heat on in there. And they had it set to 2 degrees just so the pipes wouldn't freeze. And it was a cold winter. So we were in there painting. We had sweaters, vests, toques on, you know, you see your breath, but we were painting, and then, you know, and you do what you can to get through, right? That was one winter's, yeah.
I think it is a very valid point, and one thing that I wish was provided more is space for emerging artists. Do you ever see yourself slowing down and doing something else other than art or painting? Like another hobby that you enjoy?
At this point in my life?
You're never too old to start something new.
I think I'm still doing it. You know, I've tried all sorts of different crazy things to paint. Always like, what's the hardest thing to paint? Well, go look at a 1959 Pontiac in the front end. That's a problem solver, that one. You know, so there I am digging into it, and then there's the rust that you got to throw in there and whatnot, and I enjoy it. You know, I seek the challenge. I live off it. If it's easy, I move on. It's just done. I know how to do that. We're moving on.
Yeah, fair enough. If you were to give aspiring artists any piece of advice to help them start their career, what do you think it would be?
You've got to embrace art history. You just got to, and the sooner you get to Paris and wander around those halls, the better it is going to be for your career, because then you're going to see the level that you're going to aspire to, right? And you won't get that really in North America. Excuse me, but that'd be one thing for sure. Build up your photo files. Always have a strong photo files, because it's just what you work from, right? You get an idea, it's like, oh, I need some crows, and you look at animals, birds, you know. And I learned that when I was in the I guess the commercial art game. I was playing around with a guy, and he had this folders, and everything's digital now. It's different. Everything changes, but it is just kind of the same. And patience. Don't ever be in a rush. You know, you got to enjoy this ride, right? Painting is about learning, right? How do I challenge? It's a challenge. How do I do this? And if you got an area that's boring you, put the most energy into it. Make it exciting. You know, if you got a blank wall behind a subject, it's like a lot of artists, I think, would probably just paint it white and then move on. It's like, well, I want this, you know, put some gradient in the color. Let's see some texture, you know, and just do things like that. I guess, I don't know. It's sometimes I feel guilty if I encourage young people to get in the arts because it's such a hard game. Most artists don't make it past 30, and then next thing you know, they're 30 and they're trying to catch up in their life, you know, and that's a hard thing too. It really is a very hard career.
Yeah, if anyone asks me if they should get in the music industry, I always say no. That is not because I don't want competition. I'm like, 'cause you don't want the stress.
Yeah.
It's if you love something enough, the money doesn't really matter, but to have to survive, money matters, and that's the hardest.
I always loved hockey. I loved the game. I loved the fluidity of the game. It was a beautiful thing when you had 5 minds working in sync, and it's such a fast-paced, thinking game, and it's a great workout. It was just, and your camaraderie with my friends I made for life. I had built the studio with my friends from the hockey team, you know, and it's one of those things. And art kind of is like that too, right? It's you got to be able to just love the moment, right?
Yeah.
The difference with hockey is as you get older, your game kind of goes downhill. You got to learn how to cheat a little bit here and there. Whereas in art, hopefully your game's going uphill, and as you get into old age, you can carry on with, you know, some degree of proficiency.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's the hardest thing about being an artist is it's not sports you can get really good at really quickly by putting in the hard work.
Yeah.
You can't there's no shortcuts with an artist. You can't skip music theory. You can't skip understanding how to play your instrument or use your paintbrush and understand color theory. If you want to be successful, you have to understand all aspects of it and learn and fail. And I think that right there, the failure aspect is what scares a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I mean, art is kind of, like you say, it's all gone digital now. It's AI. You know, people want a poster made, AI, done. You go back into the days, say Michelangelo or Leonardo, whatever, those guys would have their own little team of artists, whatever, and if you were an apprentice, I think you would spend 8 years just learning color before you even hit the brushes, right? So now you go to art school, and it's like a 2 or 4 year program, and color is something that's kind of briefly talked about it, but really not to the degree that it could be. I mean, to learn color properly is a big thing, and it's a good thing to learn if you're an artist, is to be able to get that struggle of the color out of the game and then become sure-footed.
And that's actually a perfect segue into what you want to dive into at the beginning of the next section, which is...
If you're a young painter and you want to, know how to go about it, I think this is a good show for you to watch. It's the second segment. I remember the first time I put oil paint to palette, and I had never had a lesson or anything, and I was just like, and then I make mud. Oh, man. It's like, so I didn't touch the oil paints for years afterwards. I mean, I finally got back to art school and then slowly got back into it. My drawing skills were always there, but the painting skills were quite a bit different. The brush is different than the pencil. Well,
I'm excited, and we can dive into it right now. So we're gonna stop the chat portion of our stream, and we'll be back in a few minutes with the live demonstration. So we'll be right back. If you guys would like to be a guest on the show, there will be a QR code at the bottom of the screen. You can scan, and we'll get in touch with you. From all of us at StoryHive On Location, I'm Robb, and this has been StoryHive On Location Kelowna. We'll catch you guys next time.
Peace and love.